Welcome into another edition of Hand Raise Guys presented by Comer Heating and Air and Southern Air Conditioning and Heating. I'm Neal McCready. Today on the show, I'm joined by Carey Murdock, Soonerscoop.com, and Michael Luker, the recruiting reporter for RebelGrove.com. We'll talk about Oklahoma's preparation for joining the SEC, how Sooners fans and Texas fans are different, one last year in the Big 12, and much more with Carey before shifting to Ole Miss football recruiting and a tour around Major League Baseball with Michael. First, let me tell you about Comer and Southern. They've got different names, but they offer the same people, the same great products, and the same great services. If you live in Oxford, Batesville, Tupelo, or the surrounding area, call Comer, 662-801-1777. If you live in Hernando, Memphis, or the surrounding area, call Southern, 662-429-4429. This will be the Friday Oxford Exxon podcast. Oxford Exxon on Highway 6 West in Oxford. We're coming up on 10 years with the Oxford Exxon as our title sponsor. Do us a favor if you're coming in or out of town, fill up at the Oxford Exxon. It's always clean on the inside as well. Great place to get some ribs for the weekend, both wet and dry. Great beer selection, good soda selection, that kind of thing to cool yourself off on a hot summer weekend as you enjoy summer here in Oxford. I'm coming to you from the Clark Ford Studios. Clark Ford's in Amory, Mississippi. 662-257-1900 is the number. Call it. Ask for Corey Clark. Tell Corey what Ford product you're looking for. He'll send you a quote within 15 minutes in business hours. Right to the bottom line. There's no hassle. There's no haggle. You get your quote, and the rest is completely up to you. You can shop that quote around, or you can do what I've done, what I recommend that you do, and that is hop into a Clark Ford today. 662-257-1900. All guests join on the myperfectfranchise.net hotline. If you're a displaced corporate executive, you're wanting to put your career in your own hands. If you're an experienced entrepreneur wanting to diversify, Andy Ludicky can help. He owns multiple franchises and businesses, and he uses his expertise to help others find their American dream through a very thorough and free consultation process. So call Andy. Put your life and your career in your own hands. It's 100% free. You got nothing to lose. Find your perfect franchise at myperfectfranchise.net or contact Andy anytime at andy@myperfectfranchise.net. You can also call his cell 404-973-9901. Now a word from our sponsor, BetterHelp. It can be tough to train your brain to stay in problem-solving mode when faced with a challenge in life. But when you learn how to find your own solutions, there's no better feeling. A therapist can help you become a better problem solver, making it easier to accomplish your goals, no matter how big or small. I've used therapy as a way to handle stress, to clear negative thoughts, mentally relax a little. For me, it was a life changer. Frankly, it increased my happiness. If you're thinking of giving therapy a try, BetterHelp is a great option. It's convenient, accessible, affordable, and it's entirely online. Get matched with a therapist after filling out a brief survey and switch therapist anytime. When you want to be a better problem solver, therapy can get you there. Visit betterhelp.com/MPW today to get 10% off your first month. That's betterhelp.com/MPW. Our next partner is Athletic Greens. I take AG1 by Athletic Greens literally every day. I drink AG1 because I wanted better gut health, sustained energy, immune system support, and I just hate taking pills. I drink AG1 every morning. First thing, I know that I'm giving my body something good, giving my body the nutrition it craves, and covering my nutritional bases. Covering my nutritional basis for the day literally couldn't be easier, which is why I trust Athletic Greens. I just mix one small scoop of AG1 with water and drink it first thing in the morning. Done. I also like that it costs less than $3 a day. Pretty good if you ask me. It's a really effective daily habit with the highest quality sourced ingredients. It's a win-win. If a comprehensive solution is what you need for your supplement routine, then Athletic Greens is giving you a free 1-year supply of vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. Go to athleticgreens.com/MPW. That's athleticgreens.com/MPW. Check it out. Now here's Carey Murdock on the myperfectfranchise.net hotline. Carey Murdock of Soonerscoop.com, kind enough to join. Carey, first of all, thanks for being here. Appreciate it. Hope you're having a good summer.
Hey, Neal, it's always good to be with you. Good talking to you again. And now we're Eskimo brothers, sort of, if you,
Sort
I
of.
don't know what you call conference members, but something like that.
So the last time that we had you on, I think the general consensus among everybody, it's not that we were quote wrong, it's just everybody kind of assumed, I think, that it was going to be 2025 before Texas and Oklahoma joined the SEC. Obviously, that's been moved up a year. Texas and Oklahoma will join next year. And I say that to get into this. When we had that conversation, it was about a year ago, you said, hey, Oklahoma might need all that time to get SEC ready. So it's been sped up a year. Do you still feel that way, or have they been able to maybe close that gap some?
I'm trying to think. That was before 6 and 7 happened, right?
It was.
So yeah, they could probably use another year to get ready. So yeah, it is what it is. I think that what we didn't know a year ago when we talked, or however long it was, is that they actually had a capable person replace Bob Bowlesby in the Big 12, commissioner's chair. And I think Brett Yormark was smart enough to say, okay, we need to move on. We've already got these 4 teams coming in. Look at what's going on with the Pac-12. If they leave, maybe it helps us bolster our conference even further. So I think in the end, it just became a mutually beneficial situation for all parties involved.
What happened to get 6 and 7? From the outside, it looked like it was just this kind of almost a rebuild, which looked odd for Oklahoma to be going through that.
It was a massive, in what, Brent Venables has talked about it a lot, but the roster turnover, when you lose a head coach in this day and age, and especially a guy that is both your head coach and your offensive coordinator, it just decimated the offense. I mean, they also had, very little depth at positions on both sides of the ball. You had a defense that was learning a new system. It wasn't like terrible, ugly football, but it was one of those things where, they were in most of the games except for when Dylan Gabriel was out with a concussion midway through the season. The Texas game was an abomination to try and even watch. But it was one of those things where they would allow a team to drive down the field and it would, at the worst possible moments. And it was almost became like whoever had the football last won, because the defense just never, I think everybody knows that's paid attention to Oklahoma. Like, probably one of the biggest reasons Lincoln left Oklahoma is he himself probably never believed that they would be able to build a championship defense because it had been so long, in the world of college football. Like, you think back to 2010, like I've seen that 2010 team that won a Big 12 championship, and you watch them play defense and you're just like, holy hell, like they used to play defense around here. Kids have grown up, a generation has grown up thinking that Oklahoma sucks on defense and that they're helpless. But, it did get to that point, and you wondered if it would ever be able to be fixed. And I think Brent Venables is about one of the few people in the country that would be able to come in and fix it. Not that he has, but just both sides of the ball were just struggling. And it was a incomplete team. They had a few playmakers here and there, but they didn't have, they no longer had Caleb Williams. I mean, he would have made a huge difference in 6 and 7, and probably they would have won 4 more games just with Caleb Williams.
So Jeff Lebby's over there, and it's a weird relationship with some Ole Miss fans and Jeff Lebby, because number one, you have some people here in Oxford who really, really like Jeff Lebby a lot. And then you have some people who I think they sort of viewed his departure from here as there being some acrimony between Lane Kiffin and Jeff. And I don't know, there probably was a decent amount, and it was weird, complicated stuff. But he's over there. This is year 2 for him in that offense. As you mentioned, bringing in new people, all that stuff. Where's that offense this year?
Well, that's the thing. It's, that's the thing with offensive coordinators, isn't it, though? I mean, they're never universally liked no matter where they are. I mean, even Lincoln had his detractors about running the football, didn't do it enough, too many 3 and outs. And that's kind of continued a little bit with Jeff Lebby, because that's just kind of, fans, there you have the older generation fans. Like, I do a radio show with an old guy. He's always talking about tight end down the middle is always open, always like everyone has their little trope that they use, that the offense doesn't do. I remember being a kid and, you'd always have buddies like, you can tell what play they're going to run before they even snap the ball. Like they tip it off every time. Like everybody has their thing. So no one is loved universally as an offensive coordinator. And, Jeff Lebby's issue was he had to go out and scramble, find a quarterback. Now he found a decent quarterback in Dylan Gabriel, a guy that he'd worked with before. But he wasn't Caleb Williams. He wasn't Kyler Murray. He wasn't Baker Mayfield. He wasn't Jalen Hurts. So congratulations. I mean, Spencer Rattler got booed out of that stadium. I mean, now he's at South Carolina. I mean, it's like you, as a quarterback at Oklahoma, your expectation levels are that you're the number one pick in the NFL draft. Like that's the only thing that's going to satisfy OU fans after the last 5 years is that's what they believe their quarterback should be the number one draft in the NFL draft, or we'll go get somebody else, or we'll the 5-star that's sitting behind him. I bet he's going to be the first round pick in the draft. I mean, there are already people that feel like Dylan Gabriel had his shot and that they're ready to see Jackson Arnold, the 5-star that they just signed. It is a very pressure-packed situation around the offense. So, I mean, I'll say this, the administration, they are backing Jeff Lebby. They know that he is, on the cusp of getting a head coaching job. And I've even talked to, some people who are actively involved in the Jeff Lebby war chest to make sure that if he takes another job, it's going to be for a head coaching job in a Power 5. They're not going to let him walk for, a group of 5 offensive coordinator or a head coaching job. They want to make sure that he's one of the best paid offensive coordinators in the country.
You mentioned Jackson Arnold. I mean, even from the outside, I hear nothing but people raving about him as a future elite quarterback. We live in this transfer portal world now where if the kid goes, hey, I'm not getting to play, I'm out. I'm skating. I'm going to go someplace. I'm going to play there next year. Is there a world where Dylan Gabriel's healthy, but Jackson Arnold's the quarterback for the Sooners?
He would just have to play poorly. I mean, I don't think that you're going to see, because of that relationship, like we spoke, Jeff Lebby that goes all the way back to UCF with Dylan Gabriel. It'd be hard for me to envision a situation where Lebby, just yanks Gabriel and replaces him with Arnold. But that's also acting like, unlike the fans, they don't realize that Gabriel was actually a really good quarterback last year. Like, the games that they lost TCU, he got a concussion. He didn't play against Texas when they just got their heads kicked in. And he wasn't always the reason that they were losing football games. I mean, he did have some poor throws here and there, but what quarterback doesn't? I don't think that he's played poorly enough even last year to be benched. And I will say this too about Jackson Arnold. We have we hired, one of the better younger beat writers in the country. He was covering the Broncos, George Stoya. He went and sat in the stands with Jackson Arnold's parents during the spring game. And for the first half, just to kind of talk to him, see how they were handling it, first big experience in front of a crowd. From the stories that he told me and kind of some off the record stuff, I don't think he could have a better support system. He doesn't have, a helicopter dad that's, I think demanding that his son get in there and play right. He knows he's going to take some bumps and bruises. He knows it's not going to be easy. And he kind of enjoys, from what we could tell, just listening to George talk about it, he kind of enjoys seeing him go through the bumps and bruises and getting humbled a little bit because, I mean, he was the Gatorade National Player of the Year. And I think his dad knows, he's not as good as he thinks he is.
What's it like for the fans, for you as a media guy, kind of like going through one last season in the Big 12 with Cincinnati in the league? I'm looking at the schedule. I mean, it's like we did all this talk about the 2024 schedule, and I'll talk to you about it in a minute, but you look up and you got Cincinnati and you got Iowa State. You do have Texas, which at least will be familiar. UCF as a conference game. You got to go to Lawrence. You got one last year of Bedlam in Stillwater, West Virginia, BYU, TCU. Knowing that a year later it's the SEC, what's this like to go through this thing one more time?
An exercise in futility, maybe, is the best way to describe it. I mean, you're talking about, I think fans are excited to go somewhere different. Like if the SEC change wasn't happening, they'd still be excited to go to Provo, Utah. You've seen a lot of those football games on TV. It looks like a really cool stadium. I still don't understand the drinking situation around game days in Provo. I've been told all kinds of different things. You know, it's just one of those things. It's like, I think the fans were so sick and tired of, oh, it's Baylor, it's TCU, Iowa State. Like, what are we doing here? Like, where's Nebraska? Where's, Colorado? Where's Texas A&M? It just like so many games that they cared about or, were intriguing or places that they've gone were stripped from them. I just think there's something that they like in the newness of it, regardless of whether they're leaving in a year or not.
Are you an 8-game or 9-game schedule guy?
I'm 9-game if everybody makes more money, but 8-game, I don't really have an issue with it. I mean, I'm not really passionate one way or the other. I just figured it's about money. It's about whether ESPN's going to, cough up more money, the SEC, if they go to a 9-game schedule. I mean, am I wrong there?
No, I think you're exactly right. I think it's Sankey doing kind of what Sankey does, and I mean that in a complimentary way. His job is to make a deal that's going to bring as much money as possible to the, at this point, 16 member institutions, and ESPN's going, well, why should we pay more? And he's like, well, if you want more, you're going to pay more. And so it's kind of my theory that this season coming up is sort of like, not to minimize it, but it's kind of like it's nostalgia and whatever, and one last time. And then I think 2024 nationally, but especially for the Power Two, the SEC and the Big Ten, I think it's for everybody involved, the Big Ten, the SEC, the people at Fox, the people at ESPN, and the people that do the college football playoff, which will be 12 teams at that point. I think for everybody, it's going to be, you know what? Let's just take in a lot of data here. Let's see what this looks like, what this feels like, and then we can adjust on the fly. They've proven they can. Look, if you told me in 2025 it's a 9-game schedule and it's a 16-team playoff, I'd completely believe it. I mean, the whole deal, oh, we can't do anything for 7 years. That's crap. You can do it. You can do it almost instantaneously now. Look at the 2024 schedule that got released, and you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, no, like you said, if you're at a 12-team playoff, who really cares? I mean, the 12 teams, you're going to figure out who really deserves to be there, regardless if you have 8 or 9 conference games.
Yeah, for sure. I think it will go to 9 because I think ESPN will look at the new matchups. Like I'm looking at Oklahoma's schedule for 2024. I mean, they've played Texas forever, but Oklahoma at Auburn's a huge game from an excitement standpoint, right? Oklahoma at LSU is just a monster. I mean, if I'm TV, I'm not even talking about the game or who wins or who loses or any of that stuff. If I'm TV, I get Oklahoma and LSU on the same field in Baton Rouge. Put that thing at 6:00 at night on ESPN. How do you
you talk about those games and welcoming Oklahoma or Texas in? Like, what do you think the SEC fans' general feel is about the fan bases of those two programs? Is it like, with Oklahoma, I kind of see it more like, okay, people know that this is a football school. This is kind of what they do. Their entire identity is built around it. When Austin, with Texas coming in and people from Austin, I had a feeling they think it's like a bunch of boss hogs are going to, land in their city with their Cadillacs, with their Longhorns on the front of the car.
I think that's right. Texas came here to Ole Miss in 2012. And, this place was a zoo. I mean, it was the first time Texas had been here in forever. And I think what they expected was tons of Texas people, lots of like rich people, and Matthew McConaughey and Bevo and the whole experience. Right, yeah. And that's kind of what they got, to be honest. I mean, it's kind of what it was. I mean, it was a zoo, because Ole Miss has the Grove and all the stuff that's been built around the tailgating, and so everybody, like the Oklahoma people, they come here in 2024. A lot of them are going to want to. Okay, I've heard about the Grove. I've never had a reason to go to the Grove. Now I do. I want to see what that's like. I mean, I think there's going to be so much of that kind of excitement in 2024 because of what you said. It's the newness. And for Ole Miss, getting Oklahoma to come here to play is going to be a huge deal.
It is really strange because these are two fan bases, OU and Texas, that see each other every year for who they really are. I mean, they're both equally split in a 90,000 seat stadium. So, like in Oklahoma, I don't know what they call it in Mississippi, but we have the Oklahoma tuxedo, which is a sport coat, a button-down shirt, into jeans with boots on.
Okay.
And like Texas, their whole fan base is basically coach's polo tucked into jeans with it's an Oklahoma tuxedo without the sport coat, basically.
Okay.
And then a coach's polo up top. Whereas like somewhere in the 2000s, I always find this funny, and I mention it all the time, but a lot of grown men don't realize it, but they started dressing exactly like Bob Stoops when they went to games. Like they were wearing khakis and the sideline Nike polo and a visor. And I was just like, do you guys not understand? This isn't Halloween. Like you guys are literally dressing like you're getting ready to go out there and coach next to Bob Stoops.
What is the difference for people at like Ole Miss, Mississippi State, Alabama, Auburn, that they've watched Texas and OU from afar because they're big time national programs? But
I'll say this. I mean, the one thing, it's nothing like Texas A&M. Like that's a different planet from Texas. Like girls and overalls everywhere. Like I don't get the game day get up for those people. So bizarre. It's like no,
it is.
Like,
it's a cult.
I figured, yeah, it's a cult. We talked about this, but like I figured is LSU like, is it just a little different crowd than pretty much everywhere? Do they distinguish themselves?
Yeah.
Like Florida, I know that he had the long time, jorts jokes about Florida fans.
Yeah.
But it's there's some kind of like, now you have like this. I downloaded like the Photoshop beta that will do the AI pictures, like you can tell it to do a background and stuff. Like if you just said Florida fan or Ole Miss fan or Mississippi State fan, like I'm assuming Mississippi State fans would just be wearing Mississippi State stuff with a cowbell. That's probably what Photoshop would draw.
Pretty much.
There's got to be something for every fan base that just signifies what that fan base looks like as a horde on game days.
So from the outside, my view of Oklahoma is really favorable. I don't know why that is. I've been there a couple of times. My oldest looked at Oklahoma before she made her college choice, and we spent a couple of days on the campus. So my view of the place is pretty favorable. My view of the fans is pretty favorable. I think for most of the Ole Miss people, their view of Oklahoma, it's kind of built around the baseball interaction last year, which was from all accounts pretty pleasant. My view of Texas from a distance, and I don't know. I covered, like I said, I covered a home and home. I covered the game here. I covered the game in Austin in 2013 when Ole Miss won. Is more that they're kind of elitist. They're a little snobbier. I don't know. I don't know whether that's fair or whether that's just me making a sweeping judgment on one day. Because the day that I was there, it was clear that they weren't going to be very good, and they were in a pretty shitty mood, and Ole Miss kind of kicked the crap out of them that night. Turned out to be a pretty good Ole Miss team. But I guess that's kind of my view of it. I have this, and I don't know why, and you correct me if I'm wrong. I have this view that Oklahoma has a more realistic view of what it's about to walk into in 2024 than Texas does. Like, I think from whatever reason, the sense that I get is that Oklahoma fans sort of know, hey, this is going to be a little different. We're going to have our hands full, and that Texas people are like, we're going to own this league in 2 years.
Yeah, I mean, there's arrogance. I don't know if it's that much arrogance that owning the league. I think but definitely it's probably been one of those things where Texas and Texas A&M and Oklahoma, they're being their main rivals, where it's like, if anybody's having success, it's just like, oh, that's going to go away, and we're finally going to be back on top, in a couple of years. But yeah, I mean, there's some arrogance, which, for OU fans, they'll tell you that's what makes the Cotton Bowl so sweet every year when they beat them, is because they come in like, I think I have so many people that follow on Twitter, and their handles are like 49-0, because that was the OU Texas score last year.
Yeah.
Like, so people like, that try and troll and stuff like that, like that is their identity, that they beat Oklahoma 49-0 for a lot of their fans, as if it's a harbinger of things to come for all time now. But yeah, I mean, but it's not, I don't know. The McConaughey thing takes it so far over the top. Like, it's just like OU, like their most notable guys, like Toby Keith, like, and, he's got a lot of, songs about, drinking and, putting your boot up people's asses and stuff like that. But like, it's not an arrogance, or just a weirdness like McConaughey for him to be there. So I guess those two kind of represent kind of what the fan bases really are kind of like.
That's interesting. Yeah. McConaughey was here back then, and yeah, it was different. I don't know. I mean,
but here's the thing too about Texas. Like, you got to realize they're coming from a place where they've been down for a long time. They've tried different coaches. I mean, they tried Herman, and now they're with Sarkisian. And it's like, the book has not been written on whether Sarkisian's a success or a failure yet. So they can still look at it and say, well, we got Arch Manning. We have Sarkisian. We just had a running back in Bijan Robinson that was one of the best in the country.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we're on the up. Like, Texas fans need this. Like, they need to have some, unrealistic expectations, because they've just been really shitty for a long time now.
Well, I'm looking at their recruiting the other day, and again, it's just June as we record this, and so nobody's finished with their recruiting class on June the 22nd or whatnot. So they might end up with the best class in the country. There's the caveat. But right now, for a program that's supposedly on the up and is sexy and the big brand and Arch Manning and all of that stuff, they're like 70th in the Rivals rankings, and I don't know what they are on 3 or 247 or whatever, but it's probably in the same ballpark. They're not just tearing it up on the recruiting trail, and it makes you wonder, well, if this Sarkisian thing doesn't work, and again, I'm not saying it won't, but if it doesn't, it's a long period of time where you don't win. And I'm a definite subscriber to the theory that just because you won for decades doesn't mean that you'll win in future decades. And just because you didn't win in certain decades doesn't mean that you can't find a recipe to become a big winner, especially in a sport that has changed so drastically in the last few years in terms of the way that you can build a roster. I don't know that it's assured that Texas ever gets back to what it was when Mac Brown had them rolling, and Mac Brown absolutely had them rolling.
Well, I mean, think if you're Texas, like, you're only a couple of years removed, and it's not this last year. It wasn't as much of an embarrassment for if it would have happened, but you're basically 2 years removed from, as I said, Texas fans are, they're putting 49-0 as their Twitter handle. Well, you had OU fans 2 years ago saying Kansas beat Texas, things like that. And like, you remember that, like losing to Kansas twice when they were the bottom feeders of the Big 12 conference, it happened to you. Like, that's stuff that people don't forget. And it's, what, like you said, all the money, all the guys that, the fame, the donors and all that stuff that are, that kind of control things. And, they have like 50 different athletic directors for 50 different sports, it seems like. Yet they lose to Kansas twice. Like, it's one of those you couldn't make. And while they're doing all that, TCU comes out of nowhere and goes to the national championship a year ago. It's like, I'm sure that has to drive Texas fans and alumni crazy, is to see stuff like that happen. And they're just telling themselves, when is it going to happen for us?
I mean, I just pulled up their schedule for 2024, and we don't know the dates of the SEC games yet. The only dates that for sure are Colorado State, at Michigan, UTSA, and ULM. But at some point after that, they're going to play Oklahoma in Dallas. They have to go to Arkansas. They have to go to Texas A&M. God, that place will be a zoo. They have to go to Vanderbilt, and they get Florida, Georgia, Kentucky, and Mississippi State at home in Austin. I mean, that's not going to be a cakewalk. I mean, the last time they went to Arkansas, they got boat raced. Georgia's really, really, really good, as you probably have imagined, and I'd hate to be the Texas A&M coach that loses to Texas that day in whatever game, whatever date that is in 2024. That would not be pleasant.
No, it would not be. I mean, that's the thing about the SEC, though. You look at both of those schedules, Oklahoma and Texas's. I think maybe Oklahoma's is a little tougher.
I think so.
On the road to Baton Rouge, Alabama, Tennessee. But it's hard. You can have a fair debate either way. I mean, like you guys are used to that. Like, okay, this is on our schedule this year. It's kind of like, it would be like you go out to buy a car and like you have all these choices. It's like, kind of a Nissan, Toyota, or, a Mazda or something. Like you're shopping in that pool, and that's what the Big 12 is. Whereas the SEC is like, well, if I show up to work with one of those, they're going to think that I'm not getting paid very much. Like I've got to get a Lexus or a BMW, or like, it's just a different category that you're in now, to where, you have one of those, you have a Nissan and you start driving a BMW, you can't really point out what's wrong with it. Whereas if you're in the SEC and you're shopping in the Lexus, BMW, Mercedes category, you're like, you could actually be disappointed sitting in a Mercedes because you're like, this isn't as good as, the Lexus that I drove last week. Like, it's just your view of schedules and how it all works out is very different than how Oklahoma and Texas fans are looking at it. It's more of a holy shit moment for, when Big 12 fans look at that schedule.
Yeah, I would think so. I would think when you look at a road schedule and you've got to go to LSU and you've got to go to Tennessee and you've got to go to Ole Miss, and where was the other one? Alabama Alabama comes there.
Alabama comes to Norman, I believe.
Yeah. That's looks a little different than Iowa State, TCU, and West Virginia for sure. I'm curious. You talked about the Big 12 and they made the wise decision to go, hey, let's move on. We need to cut bait. What are you hearing in kind of Big 12 country a little bit about where the Big 12 goes moving forward? Are they going to pluck some teams out of the Pac-12 in your opinion?
That's the question. I mean, I think Colorado is one of those teams that's like, let's see what's out there. I mean, that the whole, unity thing that they were pushing, that narrative is over. I mean, it's clear people want to know how much they're going to make and how much they're going to be behind.
Yeah.
Because I got to think, somebody like Deion Sanders is like, look, we're going to make $25 million a year and the Big Ten's going to make 60. Like, how we're recruiting against those teams. How do we even compete in that situation? Like,
and when you do that over multipliers of 4, 5, 6 years, it becomes,
right, yeah.
You're talking about more than
playing a different
$1 billion. Yeah. You're not even in the same ballpark.
A different league. Yeah. So, I mean, there's got to be panic. I think it's just, when does the first shoe drop? Like, and like the ESPN thing with, 8 and 9 games in the SEC, I'm sure they want to get a deal in the Pac-12 in case they have to pay all this money extra to the SEC for, more broadcast for conference games. And the Pac-12, it doesn't seem like any of the networks are really making that a priority.
Last couple of things, Bedlam this year, is it, knowing it's not on the schedule moving forward, is it going to be pretty hostile, or is it always hostile? It's always been one of my games that I'm like, that's a game I want to go see. Every time I look at it on TV, I'm like, I want to go check Bedlam out.
It's a fun game. Yeah. I mean,
it looks fun, but is it going to be nasty?
There will be some nastiness. Now, OU and OSU, except for football, they're going to continue playing each other. So, basketball, men's, women's, baseball, certainly. So, I think maybe that it's not like with A&M in Texas, it was just a split. Like, they didn't exist anymore. I think with Oklahoma State, they were certainly pissed when it happened, and rightfully so. But at the same time, it's like, it was kind of interesting to see, like, could Oklahoma really pull this off? Like, could they leave the Big 12 and leave Oklahoma State behind? And they could, like they did. Like, I was surprised that they did it. And, there was some talk of political pressure. There always is in these things, but nothing really amounted to anything. So It will be very emotional. Although I'll say this, Mike Gundy lost a ton of players, just handled the transfer portal horribly. And Oklahoma State, that game will be late in the season. They might be terrible by the time they play.
That leads into something I was going to ask you about. Spencer Sanders is here for his final season. I don't know. I have no idea I think Jackson Dart's the quarterback, but I question if Jackson's the quarterback, why Spencer would have come. Anyway, you saw him play a lot. You saw the Bedlam games against Oklahoma. What are your thoughts on Spencer Sanders, the quarterback?
He is, he is really good. I mean, when he's healthy, which I don't know how much he's been healthy at Oklahoma State, he always had not really, but at least one side of his offensive line was always terrible. Like he never really had a great offensive line at Oklahoma State, never had really a great running back, although Jalen Warren's doing pretty well in the NFL. He just didn't have a lot of, he always had really good receivers. I mean, he can throw the football and he can escape the pocket. He can run, he can make plays with his feet. Like, it'll be interesting to see what Lane tries to do with him or what type of quarterback, if he just lets him freelance or if, he wants to stick him, into one, particular role. But, not always the most accurate guy, but, can make some mistakes. But when he's good, like that Notre Dame game in the Fiesta, I think it was Fiesta Bowl, he was fantastic and they couldn't do anything. I mean, he's definitely had his moments. But I would say this, if you ask any OU fan, in the bigger games that he's had, he's not always performed all that well. So, OU fans would probably tell you, that he's either not very good or that they were never afraid of him for any reason.
I know it's not your beat, but can Gundy survive another bad year or two, given what happened to him in the portal?
I mean, it'd have to be two. I think the Boone Pickens Foundation is ready to give them another giant check to continue building facilities. So the money's coming in still. But, now I think the thing that happened with Mike is, he always had an athletic director that was an older guy, the former golf coach, Mike Holder, and they were always at odds. Like, he was old school. Mike's old school too, but I think it was kind of one of those things like Holder saw him still as that quarterback that used to be, play for Oklahoma State and not the grown man he'd become, the head coach. And I think him having that friction kind of kept him honest. And then when Holder left, they brought in Chad Weiberg, who was kind of in waiting to take over. And I think he was a younger guy and probably wasn't great at pushing back when he saw something he didn't think was right in the football program. And I think Mike kind of got to do whatever he wanted to do, which left to his own devices, it wasn't the best thing. So, and we saw what happened in the transfer portal. I mean, the Spencer Sanders thing was really weird.
Yeah.
And
it makes no sense. Like, because he would be their quarterback.
Right. And they had to go out and get Alan Bowman, who Big 12 fans don't remember that name, but he got lost at Michigan. I mean, and I thought he was a really good quarterback when he was at Tech early in his career. But yeah, it's just, it was so weird. I mean, it was almost like he lost touch with reality. Nobody was there to really snap him back out. And it seems like now he's kind of, it was even like the last game of the season, he got mad at a reporter for asking him if there were any coaching changes, just snapped at a reporter. When we all knew that Mike, next time you'd probably talk to him would be spring football because he doesn't do off-season media. So there was just, I mean, he's got to prove to a lot of people that he's not turning into crazy old man yelling at the clouds.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. Last couple things, I promise. I see the softball T-shirt behind you. Ole Miss has never been able to really gain consistent traction in softball. God, obviously Oklahoma has. From a site standpoint, a coverage standpoint, you guys pretty much have to cover them at this point, right? There's that much interest.
Yeah, I mean, this was the first year we covered them daily, and we got killed last year because our subscribers were like pissed, like, why aren't you covering softball? It's like, well, we'd like to. We're not really built for that. And so we had to go out and like think of like, okay, how do we adjust our staff and cover softball and but yeah, it became that thing. And it was beneficial for us to do it. I mean, we sold like those shirts. We sold like $20,000 worth of those shirts. Like it was over 700. Like just kind of like we do a bunch of like we never did merch before we moved into these offices. And so I like doing experiments. I like, saying, okay, if we do a t-shirt for the pod, how many of those will we sell? Like, let's figure out what we're good at, what we're not good at. And then we can kick stuff to the curb or we can keep going. And softball was one of those things. And there's no way we'll ever be able to go back now, even if they don't end up with like 7 national championships in a row. I mean, people want the softball coverage. It's fun. I mean, I don't have a problem because I think softball is a really fun game to watch and cover.
Yeah, so does ESPN. That's why they put it on so much. Bless you. That's why they put it on so much. It's 2 hours. It's easy. It's quick. You don't have to have tons of cameras. The field's not very big. It's from a TV standpoint, though. I'll tell you, we'd much rather put this on all day because you can schedule around it.
Well, I mean, the most fascinating thing about it was really too just the pressure that Oklahoma was under. Having the win streak, having the 2 in a row, trying to make it 3 in a row. Like you could tell it's something that Patty Gasso was like, this is reality, but this is not really what any of these girls signed up for, to have this much attention and pressure. They basically all became rock stars. And other than UConn basketball, I don't know another program in women's sports that's had to kind of undergo that kind of scrutiny. I mean, I saw the Oriema stuff the other day when he was on a charity golf course or something, and you could tell like he's pissed off that UConn is no longer considered that type of program. So, but I think he gave his slogan for what the team slogan should be. It was, I enjoyed that slogan.
What was the slogan?
Can you F-bomb on here?
Yeah, go for it.
He said, "Fuck it, just win."
Yeah. In a lot of ways, that's really what college athletics has become, is that.
But not for women's sports. Like, I mean, like Gino is probably the first guy that, like, I think a lot of people just hated him because he was brash and, it was like he was coaching, a mids team, basically. Like he could, swing his D all he wanted to. I mean, it was just like, okay, you have a women's sports coach and they're arrogant. Like that's new to me. I don't like that. Like,
yeah.
So, I mean, and I'm not saying Patty Gasso was arrogant. I mean, she broke down a lot emotionally at the tail end run of that, but it will be nice, that for OU fans to say that they have the best of something when they go to the SEC with the new softball facility.
Well, they'll have that for sure. All right, last thing, you mentioned Texas A&M earlier, and I'm curious on this. I talk to people both on and off the air about this. Whenever I interact with Texas A&M people, they're so nice, they're so considerate, they're very polite, and yet I catch myself, and I don't know why this is, I cheer against them against virtually everybody, and everybody else says the same thing. Is it just the whole cult thing and we're against it? Or what is it about Texas A&M that almost unifies people universally against them?
It's the dead dogs. It's the, just the overalls. It's the yell leaders, yell practice. Yeah, I mean, like you said, I know several people who went to Texas A&M. They're normal people, man, but you put them together like one of those yell practices and it turns into the howdy doody bizarro land. I mean, it's off-putting and it's, I know they always like to say from the outside, you can't understand it or whatever. Like, no, nobody can understand it because it's stupid.
I don't want to understand it. Yeah.
No one wants to understand this. Like,
I've always looked at that Jimbo Fisher landing when he got the job and he's walking on the tarmac or whatever. And they've got the North Korean band playing for him and all the cheerleaders and stuff. And you could just see Jimbo in his mind going, 96 million, 96 million, 96 million, 96 million, just saying it over and over and over so he doesn't turn around and run back into the plane and go, get me the hell out of here.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's just, it can't be defended. Like, I don't care, no matter what you say, A&M fans, like, you can't defend yourselves. And they don't try to. I mean, they're just like, I wish it would be more like, yeah, we're weird. We understand it, but you don't even get it. So It's just I don't get that thing. I don't. What
Yeah, and you have to do it a certain way, or it's not right.
if you do
Yeah,
it like that, you like get
yeah.
they
I've,
put you make you clean Reveille's cages or something.
I've had fun with Ross Bjork the few times that I've seen him because he was the former AD here, and
Yeah,
I'll see him at functions, and I'm like, how's things with the cult, and he'll just laugh at you. What can he say? He was, like, hey, he's
But
probably.
I mean, the thing's like, what other school is like that? I can't. Nothing else is like it.
I mean, all schools have a certain cultish base, if you will, but theirs is so universal and widespread, and the whole thing, and it's just, yeah, it's. And then, but you're right. I mean, like I'll deal with like some of the Texags guys, and they're just some of the best people. They're super nice. They're always helpful, and
Yeah,
I mean,
like
they're
Brandon.
great.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a funny thing. I don't know. It's a fan. You nailed it. It's the stupid. It's the cheerleaders and the night yell and all this and the stuff that it's so corny. It's bad. But anyway, hey man, I kept you a long time. I really appreciate.
Oh, I was hanging out with you, so it's cool.
Thunder going to do anything tonight? Are they going to trade up?
I think I guarantee Presti has his mindset on who he wants at 12, and it's probably somebody that nobody else wants, and hopefully it's another Jalen Williams. So.
Yeah, it's all you can hope for. They're fun.
That good. I mean, I saw somebody today tweet. Somebody used to be in the media that went into PR, and he was like, Sam Presti just can't help himself if there's a 7'1" French guy out there. That's going to stick around in his league for 3 more years. Like,
Yeah.
He'll probably draft and stash or something. I mean, they got this Midic guy or whatever that, supposedly 29-year-old Euro guy that I'm kind of excited to see if he could do anything. So
yeah, Vasily Micic.
Micic, yes.
Micic, yep. Yeah,
I'd love it if they trade up though. I mean, they got the draft picks. I mean, do something weird, Sam. Come on.
Yeah, feels like they're close. Hey, buddy, as always, I really appreciate it. Look forward to being in the same league with you and getting to see you more down the road.
I might see you at Nashville if you go down this year.
Yeah, I'll be there.
About media days, so.
Yeah. Well, if you need anything from me, let me know.
All right, man. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Carey. That was Carey Murdock. Soonerscoop.com covers Oklahoma. The Sooners headed to Oxford in 2024 at some point. The specific date hasn't been announced, but the Sooners will be playing at Vaught-Hemingway in an SEC football game in 2024, which is pretty cool, especially for those of us who a few years ago sort of said, hey, this is going to happen. Oklahoma's going to be in the SEC. And they are. So, again, thanks to Carey Murdock for his time. We'll get a little more local. We'll talk some Ole Miss football recruiting, some Major League Baseball here in just a moment with Michael Luker. First, I'll tell you that in that interview, as we recorded on Thursday afternoon, I was expecting an Ole Miss commitment. I think that commitment's going to come on Friday. It's a flip, and the decommitment portion of the flip has occurred. So, but I won't totally steal the thunder here on draft night. So I'll let that happen on Friday, and we'll have coverage of that at rebelgrove.com. But for now, let's talk some Ole Miss football recruiting, some Major League Baseball, Houston Rockets, and others things with Houston native and Rebel Grove intern Michael Luker here on the MyPerfectFranchise.net hotline. Michael Luker covers recruiting for rebelgrove.com. Michael, welcome into the show. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm good. First of all, I guess we'll start with this. It's kind of introduction to the podcast. You kind of started with this in January. Has this been kind of what you thought it would be? Has it been easier, harder? What have been the eye-opening moments for you?
It's probably been a little harder than I originally would have imagined. Covering recruiting in this day and age, it's different. It's hard to reach out. These kids, a lot of them really only want to talk to national guys and stuff like that. And in this current landscape, there's a lot of stuff that under the radar just to kids have to get interviews and stuff like that. But just interviewing these kids, it's hard because a lot of them want a little bit of money to, do an interview and stuff like that. But it's definitely hard and challenging. But
Especially when your boss won't let you pay them for interviews.
yes.
That makes it even harder. I just don't. I've never understood the business side of paying a kid $50 to tell me that a place felt like home. I don't.
Yeah, it doesn't make a lot of sense just to hear, oh yeah, I love the Grove, or etc. Oh yeah, I love the Quad at Alabama, or
I
I
love
don't.
Coach so and so. Yeah, he's good.
Yeah, he real family man. Yeah, it's different, and it's more fluid than it's ever been, at least in my opinion. I'm only 21, so I haven't, I've only been doing this for 6 months. But with NIL and everything like that, which players really don't talk about too. They're very under the, they like to keep that close to their chest. But recruiting's so fluid that now it's, you don't really know who leads. It's whichever team offers the most money is more than likely going to land a kid. So that's kind of changed a lot of things. And even now with commitments in June, they don't really mean as much as they used to. Basically all it means now is that, hey, this team leads for a kid, but until pen comes to paper on, pen meets paper in December for signing day, then anything is up in the air. So
as we record this, it's like 3:40 in the afternoon on Thursday. I'm expecting Ole Miss to add another commitment in the next 20 minutes or so. So by the time you hear this, see this, it will either have happened or it won't have happened. I'm told by our national people that it is absolutely happening, so I take their word for it. We've got graphics and everything. What do you make of this recent run of commitments for Ole Miss? They've been kind of on a flurry here the last, I don't know, a little over a week, really. They've almost a person a day, sometimes more than that. A lot of activity, a lot of what I perceive to be momentum. What do you think?
Yeah, I think they have a lot of momentum right now. I think they've done a really good job of getting players in for visits and stuff like that. Ole Miss had the 3 Friday Night Lights camps, and they got a lot of good players, in on those visits, and a lot of them ended up committing, or some of them ended up committing. But they've got a lot of good momentum right now. I expect a couple of commitments in the end of this month, and then potentially a few next month. But I really think they're only in on 12 I think they've got 13 total commits right now, so 14 if you add who's popping later today. And I really think they're going to be around 19 or 20. I don't think Lane Kiffin and staff are ever really going to sign a class that is traditional, like a 25-person class, 26, etc., just because of the transfer portal. But they do have a lot of positive momentum right now. Ole Miss was able to get Cam Franklin in on a couple of visits. I think this past week was his second visit in 3 weeks, I think. So that's really, really positive momentum for him. And then with the commits as well, it's building. So yeah.
It's interesting because I don't really know what I think. I'm 90% of me agrees with what you just said about the numbers. I think you're right. But I can't help but be interested in some of what they've done. Now, look, not everybody who's committed to them right now is going to hold.
Yeah, obviously. It's
someone will bolt. They'll dump somebody. But on the flip side, there's probably, there are going to be kids that flip to them, a couple at least. The one today that we're expecting is a flip. I look at the numbers and I start to wonder if maybe this is a sign of two things. One, they're able to recruit at a higher level. They're able to recruit more kids that they evaluate well. Actually, 3 things. I'm wondering how much of this is Pete Golding's influence on the staff, and a part of me wonders if maybe this is a reflection on the cost in the portal is super high, and maybe building half of your roster from the portal moving forward. I'm not saying what they did in the past was a bad thing at all, but maybe they're looking at the market and going, you can't really count on being able to do this year over year. We're going to have to do more of the traditional recruiting just because of budgets and such. I wonder if some of that is that as well. And instead of building the roster through the portal moving forward, I wonder if it becomes a situation where you use the portal to fill gaps, not to build roster.
Yeah, I think that's mainly what that's the conclusion that I draw from it. If you look at the best programs in the country right now, the Ohio States, Georgia, obviously, Alabama, LSU, these programs are, they're not really focusing that much on the portal. So I think the staff has kind of recognized that, hey, this is probably unsustainable. This turnover and everything like that, with the culture and everything, that's hard to do, is to just have a new roster every year. So I think they've realized and, focused more on, hey, let's try to build from within. So yeah, I think that's definitely right. And if you look at, I think really the portal is kind of like free agency. Obviously it is. But I think if this translates to professional teams, I think the best teams, professionally speaking, whether it be baseball, basketball, football, those teams draft well, they develop well, and then they plug their holes in free agency. I think that teams, the first team that pops in my head is the Mets. They spend a bunch of money in free agency just to try to build the team. And, back-to-back years, they've kind of just been,
stuck.
Stuck. And I think that's, a culmination of, you can't just buy your team. So yeah.
Yeah, it's we're hours from the NBA draft as we tape this. By the time people hear this on podcast form, the NBA draft will be in the books. But if you look at the NBA teams that are contenders, that are, the Nuggets just won a title. They're home built, with the exception of the Aaron Gordon acquisition. They went out and made a move. They didn't make tons of moves. Boston, just made the big Marcus Smart trade, but that team was pretty much homegrown for the most part. And the teams like in the NBA that are perpetually trying to build via free agency, they never seem to get there. They don't ever seem to get over the hump. And so, it is culture, it's continuity, it's all of those things. And I think you can draw some correlations to college sports. I really do. I think they know it. I think Kiffin, when he got here, I don't know that, the portal wasn't a real thing. And then they lost the whole, he got here in December, and they finished throwing together a recruiting class that got decimated by the change. And then COVID hit.
Yeah.
And so you couldn't go recruit, you couldn't. And so you had to sign a first class by Zoom, and then they had a lot of holes and they filled them in the portal, and then they kind of did the portal again. And it feels like this is the first time that they really have a ton of traction on high school kids, that they won 18 games in the last 2 years. They've gone to a Sugar Bowl. They've had success on national television, all that kind of stuff. And that now they can finally sell something to younger guys who may have been skeptical of them before. And then also with NIL and pay for play, or whatever you want to call it, with the collective being in pretty good shape, they're able to compete on that front as well. So I just think some of this might be organic and some of it might be systemic, and it might just be a little bit of both.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I've had people tell me, oh, well, it's just because of this class in Mississippi being good. And, really, I kind of think that, I don't think Lane Kiffin and the staff really cares where you're from. I think that, I think that this staff, I think that this class in Mississippi is obviously one of the best we've seen, but I don't think that they're just focusing on this high school class because it's so good.
Look, whether it's realistic or not, I hear fans sometimes say, well, you can't do it at Ole Miss the way that you do it at Alabama or at Georgia. I'm not saying they're wrong. I'm not saying they're right. It really doesn't matter. I don't think Lane Kiffin thinks that way.
Yeah.
I think Lane Kiffin wants to be able to compete with Alabama and Georgia and LSU more than he is focused on let's beat Mississippi State. And so he's going to try to recruit those kinds of players. And I think the first couple of years that he was here, they didn't have enough success on the field proven to go do it. And so he did portal. And maybe now they're starting to feel like they're getting closer to that. So there are some big names in the state that are out there that people are talking a lot about. Jamonte Waller just committed to Florida. I don't know whether I think that's over or not. It's June. It's safe to say Florida leads. Cam Franklin was at Ole Miss recently. He took a visit to Tennessee recently. I think he's going to LSU or Texas A&M or somewhere soon.
He's going to Miami this weekend, or he was there yesterday. I don't know if that visit extends this weekend, but
Tell me what you think about those guys, and then any other players in Mississippi that sort of have your attention that you keep an eye on.
Well, to be honest with you, I was never that high on Ole Miss's chances with Jamonte Waller just because they never really got him in for a visit. I always thought it was going to be Penn State or Auburn, and Florida kind of came in and, rolled out the red carpet and, probably dropped a couple bags, but, they got him. So I think Florida leads right now. That's for sure. But I think it's far from over. Obviously, I think Ole Miss is going to make a push for him. I just don't know if it'll stick. Cam Franklin, he is one to not really talk about his recruitment that much, not be very public about it. So, I think Ole Miss is definitely in a good spot there, but I don't know. I mean, it's so early. It's June. There was a coach that told me that real SEC recruiting doesn't really start until after the season. So, we've got so much time, until then. But it's going to be a dogfight for him. He canceled his visit to LSU. I think right now, if you put a gun to my head, I think it's between Miami and, Tennessee and Ole Miss. And I don't know, which one is leading right now. But, it's a tough, pull to be able to compete with the Miami and the Tennessee and stuff like that. There are a couple of other prospects. There's J.J. Harrell, who just committed to Mississippi State, along with Braylon Burnside. And Braylon Burnside said that he's going to take the rest of his visits. He's got one to Ole Miss scheduled. And so, I think his is definitely far from over. And J.J. Harrell on Twitter said that his commitment was shut down. But, I don't know what that means in this day and age. Just because your commitment is shut down, that doesn't mean that coaches can't reach out to you about, different offers and stuff like that. And so, I think his is probably going to have a little bit more drama. And then there's one more. There's Norrell White, who is committed to Arkansas. And, he kind of had the flirtation with the flip, I guess, was it last month? And so
it was not a fun day for me. That was not fun because, I had been told March that he was going to commit. He came up for either a practice, one of the Saturday scrimmages, or the spring game, one or the other. I can't remember which. I went ahead and wrote the story because I'd heard it was going to happen that weekend. Then I was told, nope, you're going to do it on Easter. And then I was just told, hey, it's going to happen soon. And then I woke up one morning and I saw that he had said Merry Flipmas, and then some of the Ole Miss staffers had retweeted it. And it's 6 a.m. I'm like, do I wake people up or what do I do? And I'm like, I'm just going to write it. I'm just going to fix the story and publish it. And I did. And someone said it was down. I was like, damn it. And then because I knew I was going to get all that stuff. And so I took my flogging, Michael. I posted on the Ole Miss board. I even asked for permission to post on the Arkansas board that, hey, I'm sorry, I'm fixing it. Here's what happened. I didn't get flogged. I got flogged a little, not too, but the people who hate me enjoyed watching me own it. But I don't know. And now I have people go, hey, his deal's not over. And I'm like, well, I'll tell you what, my deal with him is until he's done something and he's put it out there and let it stay up for a while, I'm not touching it.
Yeah, his recruitment is definitely going to be, it's going to have some drama in it to signing day. But, I haven't really heard that much Ole Miss momentum recently. So I don't know if he's locked in with Arkansas now or what. But, and really his whole commitment to Arkansas was a shock because I heard back in January that, hey, he's going to commit to Ole Miss over LSU. And then I guess I can't remember what month it was now, and then boom, out of nowhere, he delayed his commitment and then he committed to Arkansas. So that kind of, shocked a lot of people. And there were certain family members of his that were not excited about that decision. So his recruitment is definitely, it's got a lot of drama, and I think it's far from over. So
in the last month, Ole Miss has added Cameron Beavers, Rajay Dennis, Joe Cryer, Jude Foster, Cameron Clark, Travaris Banks, John Wayne Oliver, Bernard Causey, and then one more that I'm not going to say it out loud here, even though by the time you hear and see this, it will have been done, but just in case. Is there anybody else that you have kind of on your radar as something that could happen, in the relatively near future?
Yeah, I think Dylan Hipp, for starters, he's a 2024 tight end from Arizona. I think he's definitely a name that people should keep their eye on. He's got a visit with Baylor coming up, and then he's supposed to commit at the end of this month. Ole Miss is the leader in the clubhouse forum, and I definitely think people should keep their eye on his name. Maurice Davis Jr., who just took a visit last week. I think Ole Miss is a leader for him as well. He did just lock up a Florida State visit, so that could throw a wrench in his plans. He's committing. You talked to him. I think he's committing middle of July.
Yeah, he had told me. I talked to him on Sunday. He'd gotten back from his visit. He's from Albany, Georgia. I had talked to him, and at the time, he had already been to Louisville. He was going to USF this weekend, and then or last weekend. I can't. Whatever. This weekend coming up, I guess. And then he was shutting it down. And he said it was down to those three, but yeah, that was before Florida State moved in. I would guess that given Florida State's momentum on the recruiting trail, along with Ole Miss's, I would have guessed from talking to him. Now again, I talked to him minutes after he got back from his visit, so he was still very much in the, the post-visit bump. But I would have guessed that Ole Miss was going to get him. He said he was going to do it somewhere between July the 10th and July the 15th. So I don't know whether the Florida State visit changes that for him or not.
Yeah. And then another prospect is Anthony Robinson III. So he just announced the top three of Ole Miss, TCU, and Notre Dame. And I expect a commitment from him sometime soon, probably in the next week or so. I really think it's down to Ole Miss and Notre Dame. And I think Ole Miss definitely leads for him right now. So those are three names that, I feel really confident about right now, that Ole Miss is, they feel good about. And three names that I definitely keep my eye on.
And then I expect it to slow down a little bit in July before the whole Juice Fest thing. They'll have their big event the end of the month. I want to say it's the 29th
yes.
of July. And then after that, camp will get rolling. High school practices will get started, and it'll probably slow down until visit season. So I know you're going to take, with the exception of Juice Fest, you're going to take July and August. You've got stuff going on, and then you'll be back in this role in September, and I'll be thankful to have you back. Let's talk about a couple other things real quick while we got you. I know you're a Rockets fan, which is
yes,
yeah. I mean,
it's bad. No,
being an Astros fan is pretty easy. Being a Rockets fan is pretty hard. That is one interesting organization. I know that still, as we tape this, it's 3 hours before the draft. The Rockets have the 4th pick in tonight's draft. Not just the pick, but what direction do you expect the Rockets to take? Because I don't understand the whole James Harden stuff, and I understand the Dylan Brooks stuff even less. And you've got a young team with Green and Jabari Smith, and you're going to add another presumably young player tonight. And then on the flip side, you're going to go add Dylan Brooks, and you're going to flirt with James Harden. Make me understand it.
Yeah, well, there is no understanding. The life of a Rockets fan is brutal. My friend sent me a screen or a video of the 2018 Western Conference Finals Game 7 and just the missed calls against the Warriors, and that hurt a lot. But it's been pain. But no, I really don't understand it, because in my opinion, as a sports team, like, being just mediocre and stuck in the middle is the absolute worst thing a franchise can do, because you're teasing the fans. You don't really you have to commit to either a full rebuild or you have to commit to just going all in.
That ownership he doesn't have the patience for a full rebuild.
No, and that's the frustrating thing, is because if you rebuild right, if you're patient, if you have the right people, then in 3-4 years or 2-3-4 years, however many, it'll pay off, hopefully, if you hired the right people. But yeah, Tillman Fertitta is not very patient. And so I really don't know, but I assume that they're going to get Amen Thompson, and it's just a weird team. Last year they were awful on defense. They were so undisciplined. There's so many chemistry issues, locker room issues. I think it was John Wall went on the podcast and was talking about just how, like, the players acted. Talking about how, talking back to the coaches and everything, like, no discipline. And as a Rockets fan, that's awful to hear because it's like, oh, great. I've been through 2 seasons of absolute misery, and I'm glad that it's not going anywhere, So I really don't know. It's really frustrating to be a Rockets fan. And it's really sad to see because, a team like Denver trusted the rebuild process. Their owner was like, okay, we'll trust it, and it paid off. I mean, now they're probably odds-on favorite next year. And, they have a window now.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
so it's frustrating to see. And I really don't know. I hate being at, the bottom, but I don't want to be stuck in this mediocrity with if we take on Paul George's contract or sign James Harden. Like, why? What is the purpose of it? I don't know, man. I hate it. I hate being a Rockets fan, but it's like the Texans, but
yeah, it's another story entirely. Although they appear to have some direction now. The Texans.
No, we do. I'm so happy about it. I really am. I love D'Amico. I think we're going places.
It's rebuilds are interesting because most don't work. Most rebuilds fail. Very few of them work. They require some luck, and in the NBA, they require lottery ping pong ball luck.
Yeah,
you have to have some luck. You've got to and then you've got to draft well, and then you have to be patient, and that is really hard to get all of those things lined up, especially in a market where the fans, because look, your attendance, no matter how rabid your fan base is, when the Nuggets weren't very good, their fans weren't there, and like the last couple of years that I noticed the Thunder are starting to do this thing about their fans. I'm like, man, the last couple of years that's been an easy ticket if you wanted to go to a Thunder game, and so they're getting closer to being in the playoff mix and maybe being able to get to that place where you pull the lever on going for it. Like Denver, the lever was getting Aaron Gordon. It was there. Okay, we're a piece away. Let's go do it. And but that, man, if you pull the lever too soon,
you're screwed.
You just tailspin and you get in that purgatory like you talked about.
It's like the Clippers. They're a prime example.
Yeah, and they've had bad luck.
Yeah.
I mean, when Paul George and Kawhi Leonard are on the floor together, fully healthy, they're an elite team. It's just neither one of those guys are on especially Kawhi. I mean, Paul George just got hurt, but Kawhi's always got stuff. You're a Major League Baseball fan. You're a big Astros fan. Your Astros, as of this taping, 5.5 out in the American League West, behind Texas, just a half game ahead of the Angels, who are kind of hanging in there. As of today, the Astros would get the last wild card spot, right ahead of the Angels, the Blue Jays, 2.5 ahead of the Red Sox, 4.5 ahead of Cleveland and Seattle, and then there's a fall off after that. In terms of the sport, I don't know that Major League Baseball has ever been healthier than it at least they made some changes. People like the changes. The games are moving faster. Stolen bases are back in the game. There's a lot of really talented young people, young pitchers, young hitters in the game. There's a absolute generational superstar in Shohei Ohtani in the game right now. What's your thoughts on just the state of Major League Baseball?
I love it. I mean, there's this false notion that my brother, who's 40, that his generation, not to call him out, that his generation has that baseball is dead. And to me, it's not. Blackouts do suck, and that's a whole different topic that I could rant for an hour on. But I mean, you have young teams winning everywhere. Baltimore is one of my favorite teams to watch just casually. I mean, they have so many young, Adley is great. Gunnar Henderson's up and coming. Yep. And they've got guys in the pipeline. I mean, Cincinnati is, they've won 11 in a row. I mean, De La Cruz is just absolutely electric to watch. Now, I think that they'll eventually fall down to earth a little bit. Their pitching staff is not the best, and Hunter Green just went on the IL. But I mean, it's awesome. And I think if you ask Rob Manfred, hey, what is your dream season? This is it, because outside of 4 teams, everyone's really in contention. And that's kind of, it's going to force the deadline to be a lot more interesting. I think teams are going to have to overpay just because of how many, sellers, how little sellers there are. And I think the league is it's great right now. It's must-see TV. And it's really entertaining for me as a baseball fan, because every night there's an intriguing matchup.
All right, let's go through the divisions a little bit. We'll take a quick, almost at the halfway point. visit on Major League Baseball. The AL East will start there. You mentioned Baltimore. They're Baltimore 17 games over 500, 45 and 28, but they're 5 back of Tampa in the American League East. Tampa 52 and 25.
32 and 8 at home. That's, I mean, that home record, home field advantage in the Trop. That's great.
And if the playoffs started today, the Yankees would make it as a wild card along with Baltimore. The Yankees are 41 and 33, 9.5 off the pace. Obviously, it's a loaded division. Tampa's played great baseball the whole season. You mentioned Baltimore. Of those teams, though, if I told you that one of them was in the World Series, one of those 3 teams, which one would you put your money on?
I'd probably put my money on Tampa Bay. Just because I feel like the Yankees every year I don't really like how their roster is built. They strike out too much. There's not a lot of contact in there. Even with their signing of Anthony Rizzo a few years ago, or trading, or I guess was it a trade or something? I can't remember. And it was a trade at the deadline.
Cubs traded him on day before the deadline.
Yeah, and they re-signed him this year just to get some more contact in that lineup with DJ LeMahieu, but they strike out too much, and that's not really a good recipe for postseason baseball. I really like Baltimore, but they're just a little young. They kind of remind me of like a 2015 Astros team, really young and up and coming with a lot of talent. But their starting pitching is solid, but they probably need to make an addition or two. But they're definitely on the rise. And Tampa Bay is just complete. I mean, they've got stars everywhere. Wander Franco, Tyler Glass now. I mean, they're loaded. And if they can, their pitching staff has actually been banged up a little bit. And so if they can get healthy, I mean, it's going to be tough to beat them.
All right. The Central in both leagues is awful, but we're going to talk about the American League first. Minnesota's a 500 team, and they've got a 1-game lead over the Guardians, who are 2 under 500. Detroit is 32 and 41, 4.5 back. Probably cursing a little bit because that's just close enough for your fans to get pissed at you if you don't try to do something. But when you're 9 games under 500, you're not a championship caliber team, and you probably should move. And they've got Heimer Candelario at third, and they could move him and probably get some pieces for him, and they probably will. Here's my question: either Minnesota or Cleveland, either one of those teams have enough to win a playoff series?
Minnesota has the frontline pitching with Joe Ryan and Sonny Gray. And Cleveland has really been one of my most disappointing teams this year. I expected them with Jay Ram. They signed Josh Bell, Shane Bieber. I expected them to be, really, really good. And it's just kind of gone to, for lack of a better word, shit. Zach Plesac got DFA'd. They've struggled all around. Minnesota might be able to win a playoff series, but I don't know. I really don't see the Central. There's one thing that a lot of baseball fans don't understand about the Central markets in both. And it's that outside of the Cardinals and Cubs, there's really not a major market in there. And so that's why a lot of those teams kind of struggle. But, Minnesota, maybe. But if you're Cleveland, if you're Detroit, if you're the White Sox, you have to be thinking about a rebuild. I mean, you have to. You're stuck in this middle, like I was talking about. You're mediocre. The Chicago White Sox were so promising 2 years ago, and now it's awful. I mean, they've got players requesting trades. I mean, it's terrible. But yeah, if I had to, I mean, I wouldn't feel great about picking Minnesota winning a series, but they're probably the team in the Central that could probably do it.
Like I said, your Astros are 5.5 back in the AL West behind Texas. What do you think of the Rangers? Obviously, the Astros are a championship DNA team, and no one's counting them out until they're out. And then I want to get your thoughts on the Angels. The Angels 41 and 35. They're in the race. Probably entering a 6-week period that organization has dreaded for a while, where if they get hot, super, right? You just ride with it and see what happens. But if they don't, if they tread water, or if they lose ground, they have a remarkably difficult decision to make involving a once in a generation type player.
Yeah. Well, I think the Rangers are legit. I think they're probably a little bit overinflated. They've played a really easy schedule thus far, but I think they are legit. the one concern I have with them is starting pitching depth. And their bullpen is kind of shaky, but their lineup is the best lineup in baseball right now. They've got a 152 or a 153 run differential. I can't remember off the top of my head. But I mean, their lineup just rakes. The Astros, we've struggled with injuries a lot. We missed Altuve was out for, gosh, I guess a month and a half. And, we just lost the cornerstone of our lineup in Yordan Alvarez, about a week ago. So our offense is terrible. And our pitching staff is okay. We've lost 2 arms they were both on the 60-day. I think Jose Urquidy will come back and Luis Garcia had Tommy John surgery. But we need a couple of, bats at the deadline. And the problem with that is there's not a lot of sellers. And the teams that are selling, the Royals, the Rockies, and the A's, they don't have pieces that you really want to trade for, offensively speaking. Maybe a couple players, but nothing, out of the ordinary. And the Angels, I mean, another team that's kind of always been stuck in that middle level. It's like, what do you do? You've had two of baseball's best players of all time. Shohei Ohtani is probably my favorite non-Astro outside of Luis Arias. But I mean, what do you do?
He's my favorite player, including all the guys that play for the Cubs. I mean, I love Shohei Ohtani. There's nothing about him that I don't just absolutely love. I mean, and if you're baseball, you're like, we need this guy in the postseason. I mean, look with the World Baseball Classic. I mean, he took that event, which in the past has been like, oh, this is kind of cool, whatever. And when he pitched against Trout at the end and all that stuff, I mean, it was a huge sports moment. Can you imagine that in October? They need him in October, and I interrupted you. I just think it's the most fascinating story. What do you do if you're the Angels and over the next 6 weeks you just sort of play 500 baseball and Texas runs away and or Houston runs away and the AL East teams continue to run away? I mean, what do you do when you go, okay, well, we've got 2 months left with this generational talent. We're not going to the playoffs. He's not going to sign with us. Do you try to get value as a rental, or do you just ride it out and go, oh, we're going to let him hang out here next to Disneyland until the last possible minute?
Well, it's a tough decision, but it really depends on what their owner wants to do. Does the owner want to be a franchise that's profitable and will make money? Because, regardless of, fans know that's their last time to see Shohei. So there's going to be some, because he's not re-signing with LA, the Angels at least. And so if I was a GM and we're playing 500 baseball, I mean, I would trade him, because obviously you're going to need ownership approval trading that, that star, but, you have to put what's best for your team, and what's best for your team is not getting a draft pick, making him a qualifier. Can he be qualified as be a qualifying free agent? Can he be made an offer? I can't remember. I probably should search that.
So, but even if he could, he's not going to take it. Yeah, you get a draft pick for it, but come on.
Exactly. So would you rather do that, or
as opposed to if you put him on the market, for example,
you're going to get the biggest haul of all time of any deadline acquisition.
If you put him on the market today, a team like the Yankees, a team like the Braves, the Dodgers, even. Mm-hmm. We'll talk about the National League in a minute, but there's a number of teams. There's a number of teams that would go. 2 things they'd say. Number one, he's probably worth it for 2 months on the field.
Yeah.
Might push us over the top. Might take a good team and make it a great team. Could be a huge difference maker in a series. And then, hey, we could show him our culture for 2 months. I mean, it wouldn't be a negotiating window officially, formally, but informally it would be.
Yeah.
Informally, you'd be saying, hey, look, this is what we're all about. This is, and you'd have that fresh in his mind when November rolled around. And, I can see how that's an advantage. Is that worth giving up 4 top prospects? I don't know. Depends on who you are and how deep your franchise is and how much you believe in your ability to sell him and what you believe about how open-minded he truly is at the end of the season. But if you're the Angels, letting him walk away at the end of September with nothing but a draft pick or less is brutal.
to me, there's only two options the Angels have. If they play, or if they're in the playoff hunt, you keep them because playoff revenue, everything like that. And if you're around 500, or, I think teams usually like to be around 5.5 at the All-Star break, 5.5 back from either a wild card spot, divisional spot. That's kind of the target area. If you're beneath that, you trade them. I know it sucks. I know the fans would be awful, would hate the decision. But, Juan Soto got 3 top 100 prospects for him. Shohei Ohtani would get 4, potentially, he would get 4 and some fringe 150 guys. He would be his return would be insane. And so I think that's something that you have to do.
I agree completely. All right, let's talk some National League before we get out of here. We'll start in the East. We started in the East on the American League. The Braves playing great baseball. They're 22 over 500. They have a 6.5 game lead over the Marlins, a 10-game lead over the Phillies, 14 over the Mets. They're abysmal. I think Atlanta is probably my favorite right now to win the World Series. I picked them before the season to win the World Series, and at the time I thought this is just kind of taking a flyer. But I just think they have a very complete team. I loved the acquisition of Sean Murphy in the offseason. They haven't missed a beat without Dansby Swanson. The depth of their organization is tremendous. They pitch it well. Their bullpen's good. Everything about them. They don't really have a weakness. I love them in the National League, at least to get to the World Series. Yeah, no, I do too. I think their one deadline acquisition is probably going to be an arm, just with the amount of injuries they have right now with their arms. And, it's hard to depend on a 40 or 39 or 40. I can't remember how old Charlie Morton is. It's hard to depend on that. But yeah, they're playing amazing baseball. And with Austin Riley kind of having a down year, Orlando Arcia has stepped up and should be the starting shortstop in the All-Star game. I don't know if he will or not with voting and everything, which is another tangent I could get on. But no, yeah, they're probably the most complete team in baseball. They have studs in their bullpen. Their lineup there's not really an easy out. Mike Harris is back to hitting. They're really fun to watch. And, I as well took them. I think I had them I can't remember what odds I had them at. I want to say I think the Astros were at 650 and they were at 7. But yeah, I took Atlanta to win the World Series this year as well as the Astros. That was my heart bet, but I had to bet with my brain a little bit. So I didn't take anybody out of the Central. I thought the division would be bad. I didn't think it would be this bad. Cincinnati's won 11 in a row. They're not obviously going to keep up that pace. They're 40 and 35 as we tape this. I need my readers to read my phone. They're 40 and 35, game and a half up over Milwaukee. The Brewers are 2 over 500. The Cubs are next, 2 under 500, 3.5 back of the Reds. Pittsburgh has cooled off considerably. They've lost 9 in a row. They're now 34 and 39, 5 games out of the lead. St. Louis, who I thought would win the division, is 31 and 44 as they get ready to play the Cubs in London. 9 games back in the National League Central. There's a lot there. It's interesting. So the Brewers and the Cubs have some guys that could fetch value in the market.
Yeah.
The Cubs could probably get a pretty nice package for Marcus Stroman.
100%. Yeah.
They could probably get a pretty nice package. They could get a nice piece for Kyle Hendricks, who's got an expiring contract. Would help a team in a postseason the way he's pitching right now. Cody Bellinger has he had the knee injury that made him miss a month, but he looks like he's getting back into form. Could play the outfield, can play first base. His bat is not MVP caliber, but it's better than it was the last couple of years. Milwaukee could probably get a ransom for Corbin Burns if they put him on the market. Yet those teams are sitting there a game and a half back in Milwaukee's case, 3.5 back in the Cubs case, of a Cincinnati team that, they're rabid right now, but they're going to cool off, and they don't really have anybody that's been there before, with the exception of Joey Votto. That's a really tough call for those teams.
And I think in the Cubs case, this is probably going to hurt you a little bit, but I think their expected win-loss is 40 and 34, which would put them at the front of the division.
Yeah.
You know, I think
Yeah.
they're the only team with a positive run differential in that division at like plus 25 or something like that. So I think, you know, with the Cubs that, you know, Stroman is on an expiring deal. I think you definitely trade him. No disrespect to Marcus Stroman, but he hasn't really shown that he could be a consistent pitcher throughout his career. So I think you definitely move him because, you know, it's like the Cubs are going through a rebuild stage. You know, they've got some good young pieces. Christopher Morel, by the way, is still on a tear. He's cooled down a little bit, but, you know, and so I think you have to move Stroman. You know, you have to move him for some prospects because, I mean, why keep him? I know he's probably going to want 4 or 5 years, 20 million a year.
The problem they have is a PR problem. The baseball side, and it's easy for the Jed Hoyers of the world to say we don't make emotional decisions. I get it. I do. 100%. If you're in it, say you're at July what's today? June the 22nd. Say July the 22nd, and you look up and you're 2 games back of the lead. Do you have a championship team? Nope. But you've got that place getting rowdy. Fans are showing up. It's exciting again.
Yep. You're selling tickets for a playoff race.
Yeah, it's full, you know, and people are getting excited again. When you sell off Marcus Stroman in an off season where Shohei Ohtani is going to be in the market, and then you don't bid aggressively on Ohtani, man, you are really running the risk of pissing off the fan base to a point where it's not tenable for you as ownership. So I think what's interesting is, and even today in London, Ricketts was asked about Stroman, and he made some comment about, you know, that's up to Jed, but we really hope that ends in a favorable manner. And you're like, boy, there you go. You know, I mean, there you go. You're feeling the heat because you had this homestand recently where they won 5 out of 6. They swept the Pirates. They took 2 out of 3 from the Orioles, and people get excited. You go to Pittsburgh and you sweep them, and now you go to London to play this big publicized series and stuff, and you come back for a homestand, and I don't know. I'm really interested to see what happens because everything in Jed Hoyer's background says that he sells at the deadline.
Yeah. Well, I think if you don't value, you know, this is obviously, I'm not a Cubs fan, but if you don't value Stroman in your plans going forward, which I think going forward, he's not an ace. I think he's a third pitcher, you know, at best.
And he's 32, right? So if he wants I think if he asked for a 2-year deal, sure.
Yeah. But not you.
But he's going to want a 4 or 5 year deal. And I can't do that. You look at what Texas just saw with Jacob deGrom. I mean, you know,
you
can't do that.
And so I think you move him. But if you move him, yes, the Cubs, I mean, they need to make a run at Shohei. Because if he's going to make your team tremendously better. Like he's not like a Jose Abreu where your fans are excited and he's 36 and you think it'll be good, but it's not good. Shohei Ohtani is going to be good. He may have a down year, but I mean, he's still, you know, he's put together 2-3 seasons of.
Oh yeah, whoever he goes to, he completely changes their profile.
Yes, and honestly, I mean, if the Cubs add Shohei, you know, with what they have right now, a lot of young pieces, you know, they're probably with how the Central is. I mean, they're probably, you know, next year, this is, you know, way off in the distance, but you know, next year, if they add Shohei, they're probably going to win that division. You know, I'm not saying they're going to win 100 games, but, you know, probably like a 91, you know, 91.
I don't think the Cubs are going to be in it. I'm very open about that. I think it's an optic of if you're not going to get him, and they're not, and you trade Stroman in the midst of a Cy Young caliber season, and if they voted for Cy Young today, he'd probably win it.
Yeah. Then what are you doing? Yeah.
The question in a big market like Chicago, the media is going to kill you and say, you know, why can't the Cubs spend like the Dodgers, like the Yankees, like the Red Sox? And in many ways, it's a fair question. And so it's that's where they're going. Let's switch to the West before we get out of here. Arizona might be the surprise team in baseball. 46-30, they lead. Another surprise team, the Giants, by 3 games. The Dodgers are right there, 41-33, 4 games back. The Padres, probably the biggest disappointment in baseball. They're 35-39 right now, 10 under. and then the Rockies, God bless them.
Yeah, if you're a Rockies fan, I don't know how you've done it, man. I really don't. But
and then they gave Chris Bryant all that money, and Chris Bryant's a great guy, and I love him. I'll always love Chris Bryant, but there was come on, man. I mean, you had to be thinking when you're another organization and you look around at two things. Theo Epstein lets Chris Bryant walk, trades him at the deadline. He goes to San Francisco, and the Giants, one of the better organizations in baseball, make no effort to re-sign him after 2 months.
That should be it. Yeah, that should
have been a little bit of a flag.
Yeah. The West is just, with the Rockies specifically. Side note, I mean, what is their owner doing? You trade Hernando because you're like, oh, we don't want to pay him, and then you fork out money for Chris Bryant, an aging star who's struggled with injuries and has been a shell of himself, really.
And the irony of it is, a year earlier, you could have traded Arenado to the Cubs for Bryant.
Yeah.
And avoided the contract. It's bizarre. Do you share my opinion that this ultimately is going to be the Dodgers division again, or do you think either the Diamondbacks or the Giants can pull this off?
I think the Diamondbacks can pull it off. I'm still going to bet with the Dodgers just because they have that pedigree of, that's their division and it's theirs until someone takes it. But Arizona's fun to watch, man. Corbin Carroll is having probably the best rookie season, and it's barely being noticed by people. I mean, baseball fans are like, oh, he's good, but they don't realize that he's got, 950 plus OPS. I didn't look and check this morning what it was at. But I mean, this kid is great. I mean, they've got a really good lineup. Zach Gallen has transformed into an elite pitcher, probably second in the Cy Young voting to Stroman.
Yeah.
And, Arizona's a fun young team. And San Francisco has just kind of, been consistently good. Lamont Wade Jr. is having a really great season. So is JD Davis, former Astro prospect at third. He's having a really good season. So they've kind of overperformed. Another team that's on a 10-game win streak is the Giants. And then the Dodgers, they're kind of, they had a fall off. They didn't re-sign Seager. They let Turner walk. And so they don't have the star power that they used to.
They saved up some money is what they did. They cleared out salary so that they can go after Shohei. That's exactly what they did. They hey, look, if they get Shohei,
yeah, I mean,
it was worth it because you sacrificed a season to go get
one of
yeah.
And they're a little bit younger, but I mean, their development is insane. They just crap out prospects that are good major leaguers. So I think eventually they'll get back on track. Interesting series. The Astros play in LA this weekend. I'm sure everything's going to be civil. The fans are going to be very nice to us and everything like that. But no, I think, but the biggest story to me in the West outside of the Diamondbacks is the Padres. I mean, their owner, historically a small market team in the Padres, their owner was like, screw it, we're going to spend big market money. And they did, and it has completely backfired. They tried to build through free agency, which, goes back to our point about, the portal and everything. They built through free agency and trades. And then, I mean, it's just completely backfired. I mean, they gave up their entire farm system for Juan Soto. And Juan Soto's been good, but he hasn't been what they thought they were trading for.
It's why if I'm the Angels, the deal that I make, I trade Shohei to the Dodgers. I hold them ransom. I get 4 or 5 of their top prospects so that years from now, when Shohei's dominating up the highway, I can go, yeah, but we have these guys, and we wouldn't have had these guys without him, blah, blah, blah. And then if I'm the Dodgers, my hesitation is just that. It's, boy, look at the Padres. I mean, Juan Soto is an amazing player, but he's just one guy. And I don't know. That's a weird team. As talented as that team is, they should be so much better.
And I think there's something to say about teams that have come up together, like,
no doubt,
have come up together, have won together, have learned how to win. And I don't think San Diego's done that. They've tried to bring a bunch of free agents together. It's the same thing in New York with the Mets. They tried to bring a bunch of guys together. I mean, Xander Bogaerts and Juan Soto and Machado, these guys don't have any really chemistry or anything like that.
As opposed to the Braves, who have all these guys that have played together. We talked about the Orioles, all these guys that have come up together, and they took some lumps together, and now they've been, they all know each other and they're pulling for each other and all that stuff. And it just goes, it's team sports. Team sports chemistry matters. We opened the conversation with Ole Miss. We'll finish there. It's always been the thing that I've talked about. I'm doing 2 radio spots tomorrow, one in Alabama and one in Texas. I know I'm going to get asked about Ole Miss and the portal and all of that stuff. And And, what do I think about their team? And it's I don't know. And that's not a cop-out answer. It's just,
The chemistry. You don't know how they're going to come together. I mean,
what happens if they get off to a bad start?
Yeah.
I mean, what? Yeah, I mean, are they talented? Yeah, of course. I mean, I think they have the talent to win 10 games. But the culture stuff, Lane talked about it last year. He brought it up. We didn't bring it up. Lane brought up culture last year in the preseason over and over and over. It's because it was something that was on his mind. And they by necessity, I think in large part because Pete Golding got to campus and said, we don't have enough good players. They went and got a whole bunch of guys, 14 defensive transfer portal guys. Maybe it works. Maybe it does. Maybe it doesn't. I don't know. We'll see. I mean, it's one of those things. But yeah, culture. If guys like you and me who watch a lot of pro sports, we see that culture matters, that chemistry matters, that you can tell teams that like each other and teams that don't. In the end, it's about talent. But there is more to it than talent.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree.
Michael, enjoy your weekend. Thanks so much for your work, and enjoy your what's coming up with your summer, and we'll be in touch soon.
Yeah, thank you, Neal. Thank you for having me. That's
Michael Luker. Appreciate you, bud. Our thanks to both Carey Murdock and Michael Luker for their time tonight on Hand Raise Guys. I got this one in a little later than I thought I would. LSU Wake Forest playing right now in a decisive game in Omaha. The winner faces Florida in the championship series. I don't have that game on. I don't even know the score. I just saw that they had gotten started. The NBA draft, as I finish this up, is about 23 minutes away. We'll talk about all of those things Monday on the Oxford Exxon podcast. Again, this will be up in podcast form as the Friday Oxford Exxon podcast, and then we'll stop for the week, get back next week. Probably one more week of shows before we sort of take a break of sorts with the Oxford Exxon podcast as well. But I'll be back with Chase Parham on Monday. Until then, have a great weekend. Stay safe. Take care.